Good evening. My name is Max Solo. I own Max Built LLC here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And today I wanted to bring in a very special guest, Cristal. A reason I wanted to pick her brain a little bit today and get her human experience is I saw the house her and her husband built. She designed it herself. All the interior trimmings, and it was very beautiful. I haven't seen a house design like that in a while, so I just wanted to bring her in, pick her brains. Cristal, thank you for coming in here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so
Yes.
excited.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Where you're from? What you do?
Yes. Well, my name is pronounced Cristal, when you say it in Spanish. So that gives it away, Latina. I was born in Tijuana, which is a city across the border in Mexico. And I came to the US when I was 15. So for, I guess, a big part of my life, I was in Mexico. But then my mom, she was very much about learning a second language. And so having more opportunities. And I think that moving to the US gave us that. Having been born in Mexico, we didn't have too much. We did struggle financially. And so moving to the US, my mom wanted to secure us an education. And so that has played a big part of who I am until this day. And what else can I tell you? Well, moving to the US, a big deal for me was learning a new language and trying to understand everything in a new language, expressing who I am with a new language. And since I was very little, I knew what I wanted to do. And
How did you, so you had no English when you moved to the United States?
so very little.
Okay.
I would say things like,
Did you go to school to learn it, or
Yes.
like self-taught?
no, well, while you are in high school, I was in 11th,
15, yes.
10th grade.
Yes.
So that was my English school per
Yeah.
se, ESL.
Okay.
So
I took ESL too.
you did,
Yeah. In second grade.
which is great. I feel like it was great for me to learn English, but at the same time, it sets you back because most of the people that are learning English the correct way would be exchange students. They put the focus on them. So all the ones who are immigrants, who are just one more number per se in that school, public school, then they sort of fell behind. But then you have to fight through that system. And I believe that's what I did along with other friends.
Yeah.
And so that's how we learn English. So in 1 year, I was ready to be put in regular classes. And
Wow.
yeah, and so then
That at 15, that's tough.
yes.
Your Spanish is ingrained already.
Yes, and you're
So learning
translating
English
everything in a sense.
is really, I mean, not as tough as when you're older, but still tough for a 15-year-old.
Yes, yeah, I
Good
would
job.
say
Looks like you broke through.
yes, and I always say I can never get rid of my accent, and I wouldn't want to because it makes me who I am. But believe it or not, once my accent was thicker.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It is now.
Did you have to take vocal lessons or anything?
I didn't, but I noticed that what was very helpful was to imitate. And so I started singing a lot in English, listening to music in English, watching shows or movies in English, and just sort of like imitating the accent and the movement of your mouth. And that was helpful. And so it almost became like a game,
Yeah.
So
And I understand being proactive. Not
yes,
too many people
yeah.
do that.
Yes.
But good job. The singing and the imitating. To me, that's like going to school, learning, being proactive.
And reading,
And
that's
reading,
another
yes.
part, because I noticed that in order for me to be able to communicate and want to tell people what I really have in my mind is through having a better vocabulary. So that's very important.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're in America, you've learned English. What's next? You knew what you
So-
wanted to do. That's where I interrupted you.
Yes, I was, what I wanted to say is from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to do art. And I remember I was in 6th grade. I was still living in Mexico, and I knew I just want to be a muralist. You know, I saw for the first time murals from Diego Rivera, who is one of the greatest muralists in Mexico, Frida Kahlo, you know, very well-known artist as well in Mexico. And I was just taken by their work, and I just knew this is what I want to do. So moving to the U.S., I saw this as a really good opportunity for me to follow, per se, my dream, right, as a child. So when I was in high school, the first thing that I took, it wasn't a painting class, it was a graphic design class, which back in the day, you know, we didn't have the technology that we have today. So it was just a desktop publishing class. And that's where my passion for designing in a computer was born. Along with, I continued to paint at home, continued to draw, but I knew this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be an artist, whether it's through graphic design or to continue to paint, you know, with any kind of medium, right?
So then what?
So then I finished high school, and I go to a community college.
Okay.
I continue to seek classes in graphic design, along with, I was also doing painting and photography, which is really interesting. I was interested in photography back at that time. And then once I graduate, I just decided I'm gonna go work at a print shop. So then I started working at a print shop, and I was in the back end of the print shop, learning how to use the big machinery in the back. And that really gave me, you know, a lot of people say, what a waste of time. You are a graphic designer, you should be in the front line designing with a computer. But being in the back end of this print shop, it really gave me the insight into how color works and how inks work. And so it made me, I would say, a better graphic designer in that sense, and a better artist, because I knew how to mix inks in order to get the right color for the designs that we were printing.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like the push for me into this industry of graphic design. But I was always very active, continuing to do my own work as you can say, as an artist. And when I say as an artist, it's not that I separate graphic design from, or put it into a different box, you know, graphic design and then being an artist. But when I say an artist, is more like doing or using mediums like painting, even printmaking. And so I continue to do these things on the side for my own, and sometimes for commissions for friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been in art pretty much your whole life? Or you feel like you're predispositioned to art?
I would say yes. And I guess like something very interesting in my family is that I was born in a family of makers. My grandmother, you know, who is 94.
Okay.
She's
still alive?
She's still alive.
Wow.
She's still very much, her mind is clear. She's still making quilts. She's still sewing, you know, learning.
Staying busy?
Yeah, reading, you know, and always active. So I feel like that's probably where it came from. Or I'm sure this is, you know, my endeavor to be active and be an artist. It comes from that. But then also my dad, who is a carpenter, and then my mom is a seamstress. And so I was always very curious about how things work. How can I, for example, if my mom was making a dress for me and I didn't like it, the way she designed it, I would quickly ask her, can I learn how to sew? And
So
she
you
wasn't
could
really
redo it?
happy, but but she said, yes, you can do it. I'm done making your clothes. So then I began to make my own clothes. All the way until I was in college. I was making my own clothes.
Wow.
So I think art was embedded in my blood from a very young age, whether it was through my dad teaching us how to hammer wood, and make a little chair for a Barbie.
Yeah.
Or through my grandma, who was sewing and teaching us how to make a dress, and even my mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
So what I'm seeing a pattern. You've got a drive. Where do you think you get the drive from? Your mom, your dad, grandma, grandpa, just to keep doing these things. Most people, they accomplish one thing and they coast.
Yeah.
Looks like you're always reinventing yourself, from art to sewing your own clothes. Or was it just necessity? You wanted it better than what was given to you?
Yeah, I think
Like, what was it? Because I want to eventually get to your house.
Yes.
And the design and
Yeah.
how beautiful it was.
So there's a story about, this, what you were talking about. I would say I had many dreams. And these dreams, I drew them, and for me, it was, whether it was going to the beach, I would just draw this idea of being at the beach with this maybe a big house or with friends. And then I remember when I was around 5th grade, I began to draw houses. And these houses were not just from the outside, it was the interior of the house. And it was very detailed. It had from the furniture all the way to, to the curtains.
That's
the
very
rugs,
detailed.
Very
Yeah.
detailed. But these homes were very big homes. So eventually, now, many years later, because you were talking about the house that we built in Charlotte, I was not remembering this, but then I had my sister come over and she said, well, I guess you got the big house because you were the only one who was drawing a big house. You had a big dream, a big house. And I said, actually, there is something to that.
Yeah.
When we have dreams and you make a list of the things that you want to do.
That's true.
Or for me, it was drawing them. It was almost like...
Or put it up on the fridge. That's what they say if you want a Ferrari.
There's something to that, right?
Yeah, it comes... So you drew your house into existence.
Yes.
Or your dream.
And it happened, and it's not like while I was going through the construction stages in Charlotte, I wasn't even thinking of that. But it's interesting that memory came back once the house was done. And it came true.
Yeah, it definitely came true. I saw that. I'm curious, did you save any of those drawings?
I don't have those drawings anymore.
Oh, you lost them? Oh,
they're all
that's
my
sad.
memories.
Oh, that's sad. That would have been cool to see how you went inside and drew the details to the curtains. Curious to see that. So how did you end up in Charlotte, and what made you and your husband, build and design your house?
So we moved here right after the pandemic. 3 years ago from San Francisco. We were there for 6 years and we really enjoyed being there, but we felt that after the pandemic we needed a change, and we actually, before the pandemic, had looked for land in the area of San Francisco. And as you know, the Bay Area in California in general is very expensive. So there was no way that we could do it there. But I do remember there was a particular day when my husband said to me, if there's something that you could do after we're all done with this pandemic, what would you do? And at the time we were living it was a big house. It was a 5-bedroom house, but in San Francisco, you can only build up. So it was narrow with not too many windows. And I remember saying to him, I would build a house with some kind of land where we can actually have many windows around the house, and what we're looking at is not our neighbor's fence, but we're actually, looking at green, looking at trees. And he said, let's do it.
Is that why your house has a lot of windows?
Yes.
It's starting to make... See, I knew there's reason to your house because it's so unique, so different. and so beautiful. So when I build for customers, not to hate on any of my previous customers, it's so hard unless you hire a professional designer that's also good, which is hard to find. Most people, including me, being in construction, I struggle with design. Even though I know what looks good, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this will fit in this house. Yours, when I saw it, just everything flowed, everything looks good, all the detailing, and I was mind blown. I saw the pictures, and I was like, I gotta talk to her. So you, so you guys had another dream in San Francisco,
Yeah.
And moved here 3 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. So when we moved here, well, prior to making the decision of completely saying yes, we're moving, we came for a trip, family trip, just to see some friends. And at that time, I had already been looking around for land. So I found this piece of land in Valentine, and it looked really good, like perfect spot for us to build something. So my husband saw it, he liked it too, but turns out someone else had already bought it. So we were a little bit discouraged, but then another spot opened up next to it. There were only 4 spots, and we just said, let's take it. So we began the process of building. We have never done this. We always bought new construction, but it was already spec'd out for you.
Yeah.
They had already done everything,
Yes.
all the main work for you. But this was something from deciding whether it's going to have a basement, no basement, and then working with an architect. And I think for me, as a designer, that was a great experience to be able to work with an architect who already, been in Charlotte. Design is a little bit more, not as contemporary, I would say. There's like an old style, like Charleston, very beautiful, how do you call it? Like more Victorian, wraparound porches, which are beautiful. But coming from California and also having traveled to Spain before and having roots from Spain, given that my great grandmother was from Spain, and my great grandfather was Chinese.
Oh, wow.
It's like,
Yeah.
this is like 3 cultures
Wow.
into one.
That's crazy. That's interesting.
But having those influences and having seen things in Spain, it really marked the style that I wanted for the house. Beginning from, like you said, when you walk in, our main door is glass door, so just having a lot of that natural light. And then when you walked in, feeling very light and soothing, that was very therapeutic for us, being in Barcelona, and just having that feeling of airiness and just lightness.
Yeah.
And I have to say, for me as an artist, art has been therapy for me. So I wanted to bring this idea into the house. So when you see the house from the exterior, it's a black house. But when you walk in, there's all this light, and the walls have this like sort of like warm white color. So I wanted to integrate all of that from our travels to Barcelona specifically.
Yeah.
And just give you an experience rather than, I always say the house is a home, right? Because when I get home, you feel like you have arrived to this destination where you can rest.
Exactly. So how long did the process take before you broke ground to design
So it
everything? Or did you just design on the fly? You break ground and you're like, what's going on over here?
Yes, actually it was very quickly, because we're used to construction in California. It takes really long time to break through. But in Charlotte, it's very different. So permits, at least what we experienced, the permits came really fast from the city, right? And
They're changing things right now.
Okay.
It's starting to get difficult.
to get more difficult.
Yeah. But okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So at that time,
yes.
I guess it was relatively faster. So by the time we get to California to sell our house, we had already put a deposit on the land. And within a month, we were doing conference calls and, doing very minimal things on things like foundation. What are you going to do? What do you want to pick for the foundation? Things that are sort of boring but are very important.
I want to say everything's important.
And I would say one curveball that was thrown at us was in regards to the foundation. So we had, as you are building, you always have a budget. And then you're also given a scenario in case that something happens, you have $100,000 for this,
Yeah.
$60,000 for
Yeah.
this. And so that money was supposed to go for the interior, right? Interior lights or anything that's pretty, that's going to look pretty at the end. Well, it turns out the foundation had a problem.
Ooh.
And so we had to secure this huge columns
Okay.
so that it can be very stable.
Okay.
So we were told that's going to be
So it was on
100,000.
soft ground,
Yes,
and you had to get engineered foundation.
to drill and
Yeah.
put this, I don't know what's how do you call that in construction, but
Pylons,
I remember it was,
pylons,
something like
support columns,
support
yeah.
columns.
caissons.
So a lot of our money
yeah.
went into that in the very beginning, and
Yeah.
you just,
So did your whole house have to be on the caissons? Or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wow.
so it's very secure in
yeah.
that sense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's yeah.
Yes. But, as you're going through the situations, you have to learn to problem solve, right? And to realize that this is good for the house, it's going to
Yeah.
make the house better
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
That was it discouraging that you
I-
weren't counting on it, but
I
now it like ate up a lot of your budget.
I think it was discouraging, but then it encourages you to, okay, so how do we come up with the next chunk of money, right? And so it makes you work harder and then just look for solutions. Okay, if we now use 100,000 for this, let's look into the interior details and where can we
Find that money.
perhaps find the money or cut back
Yeah.
or find fixtures that are a little bit less expensive than what we had in mind.
Okay.
So working with the architect was really important too, because like I said, his design taste was very particular to Charlotte. And so when we saw the first draft, it was your typical Charlotte home
Yeah.
with the dining room that's detached from the kitchen.
In the
And
front.
so, in the front, the kitchen is not so open per se to the living room. And so when I get it back, I said, okay, give me 2 days and we'll get it back to you. And I
Wow.
basically redesigned the entire thing
Wow,
with
you're quick.
added windows,
Yeah.
open up the living room, remove walls, and he was just not happy.
Well, it's your house.
Yes. So the first thing he says is, do you really need an architect?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I do, because I don't know your expertise,
Yes.
what you're good at. I don't exactly know that, but I do know that I want an open concept house and a lot of light. So I think his question was, or he actually said, I need more walls. You removed all the walls, then how do we sustain this house? And not only that, but it will become very expensive too at the end, right?
Adding all the
Yeah.
beams and
Yeah.
beefing up the foundation.
Yeah, so I had to learn that too,
Yeah.
right? As we are designing budget.
Yeah, a lot of people think you
wise-
can just blow out a wall like nothing, but then what's holding
What's holding
everything else
the
up?
structure, yes. So design-wise, I learned so much through this project, but little by little, I think the best way to see a dream come true is through building, because you're seeing it happen little by little, and your heart goes into it. A lot of money, goes into it, but the result is beautiful. When you're done.
It definitely is. How did you come up with your interior ideas because they're so unique. I've never seen them before. Did you come up with that, or did you see that somewhere? Did you pull it out of Spain, Mexico, China? Like, where did those ideas come from? Because they're very unique and turned out excellent.
Well, there's definitely, I was looking for inspiration online. Nowadays, we can just basically do so much online and just look for things. But I also wanted to pull from being born in Mexico, things that reminded me of my heritage and my roots, where I come from. And so, for example, the floor that you see in the scullery area, that floor, when you are not wearing shoes and you step on it, it feels very fresh, and there's texture on the floor, and it's very much like clay. That's how it feels. And also in the pantry, the tile that we're using is a tile that comes from Italy. And I wanted, I never been to Italy, but I wanted something that was European and also had the sort of like that contrast with the taste of Mexico. So those two tiles sort of tell that story, where I come from. And then I think it's very warmth, even though it's very light. I wish I had a sample.
Yeah, no,
I can show it here. But
we'll see if we can add some pictures to this podcast because they're worth seeing for sure. So did you end up picking all that, or did you have help from a designer?
So I had help from a designer. They give you a designer through this construction company. But in the end, she was sort of like, I don't know if you really need me, know? So she said,
you were doing your own thing.
Yeah. And she was really nice about it. She said, what I can help you with is perhaps, because I was ready to put this, I actually put together an entire mood board for her. And I said, this is exactly what I want for each room. I actually made an entire PDF. And I said, I'm doing it by rooms because it was very specific. And she said, I never had a client like you, who is so proactive, who is not scared of the work, who is actually doing my work, right? So because of that, we actually got a discount.
Oh, wow.
On the design part, where I had already done a lot of that work, but it was basically done room by room.
Good job. That's how you're supposed to do it.
And and even links to where are we getting this tile from, where are we getting this fixture from.
That's a lot of work.
So it's a lot of work, but that sort of became my full-time job at that time, along with my design work.
Good job. Sometimes when I build for customers, they think it's gonna happen, but you need the customer's participation. I feel like you went above and beyond of what a customer needs to do for a builder. So good job for that. Now I heard there's builders stealing your designs. Did that happen?
Well, I don't know if
I guess
they're using it as let's call it inspiration. We have become very inspiring. Our house has become an inspiration for many. The funny part is we still get people driving through the house and they suddenly see this big black house and people taking pictures. I guess they did for the house next door, and there's two homes that are new. They did take a lot of the inspiration for those two houses, but it's interesting because I wouldn't say our house is too modern. It still has some very conservative things in it, but the other two homes where you were saying maybe they stole the concept from us, copied. They seem a little disjointed. I would say the uniqueness of our house is that we build it from our heart. We actually, there are stories why that tile, why even we have wallpaper, why in the bathroom, for example, there's pink wallpaper with white birds. Why did I pick that, right?
Yeah.
And
tells a story.
right. Whereas in the other homes, there's just wallpaper.
Yeah.
But
There's
what
no
was
story.
yeah, there's no heart, right? It's no story. So I think even when you're copying something, or you're inspired by something like I did, I was inspired by many artists for this home, but in the end, it was our story that I wanted to shine through it.
Yeah.
But yes, they did do that.
I think that's the secret. It's your house is your story, and it flows, and it's beautiful, and it leaves an impression. Versus like I said, I struggle with interior design because I know what looks cool, what's beautiful, but then I can't come up with that story in the houses I build. It needs to be a homeowner like you that actually takes the time to do what you did.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that maybe I wanna say that there is a lot of hope though in the construction scene right now and interior design, because both go together. That hopefully there will be more construction companies who have designers who are actually passionate for this idea of design. That design is not just something that we're gonna sell to someone, just get it done, sell it, but that more and more there will be a story, right? As we are picking light fixtures.
I hope so. Finding anybody in any industry with a passion is really hard. Like me, I know I have a passion for what I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in it. Some people just do it because they need a paycheck. True. And yes, the designers or builders that have a passion are the good ones. Those are hard to find. I think you went above and beyond because it was your personal home as well, and you wanted your story to reflect your house. And that's one of the benefits of building ground up versus buying a ready-made home where you're kind of locked in already. And to make changes is just not worth it financially.
Yes.
But yeah, I really hope we get more designers with passion for what they do to tell their stories. I know a few. You did an excellent job, and I also know some that just they just want to sell you the package just to move on, get that paycheck, which is a disservice to the customers.
Yes, and I think it's part of the being passionate. I would say I was always taught since I was little, that whatever we do, and obviously we were doing a lot of things with our hands growing up. So whatever we do it with heart and with passion, and we put who we are. We leave who we are in that piece of work that we are creating, and so I think staying curious, that's been the word of the year this year for me, because even though I am a graphic designer, and I'm also interested in photography, lately I've been interested in art therapy because of the art that I do and teach to people can become therapy as well. So I think in the end it's just having that curiosity for learning always, right? Staying always fresh. Yeah.
How do you get and keep that curiosity? A lot of young people want to know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen a lot of young people are lost these days.
Yeah, I actually haven't mentioned, but I've been teaching at Queen's University.
Okay.
Here in Charlotte.
Okay.
So there's a lot of young people.
Okay.
And seeing them so young reminds you of.
So not all are lost.
Not all are lost, but but at the same time, I realize that with our new technology, especially AI, which is wonderful, but at the same time, it can become an artist from Barcelona. She said AI is veneno. Veneno in English means poison, right? And she was really strong about it, but I realized it's helpful for us, but it's also in terms of our next generation. it can makes us paralyzed a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it can make them complacent.
Yeah.
So in teaching them at Queens, I've been telling them I'm not opposed to it, but I am someone who will continue to fight for the arts as I knew it, as I learned it, whether it was through printmaking, whether it was through actual taking a brush and painting and,
Yeah.
and drawing with a pencil. All of these things AI cannot replace.
Yeah.
It can help us make things faster, right? But we should always continue to be curious for how to make art with our own hands, right?
I feel like AI is good to utilize to support us, not do our jobs
Right.
for us, but support us for sure, right?
Right.
It's here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
Might as well embrace it. Do you have any questions or anything else to add before we wrap this up?
Well, I just want to thank you.
No,
thank you so much
thank you.
for having me.
I hope some people see this video and get something out of it. What I'm seeing is, you've been curious your whole life. You have a drive, which you can't stop learning, right? Your whole life, we need to learn. We need to try things. Don't just give up. Just keep trying. And again, like I wish, hopefully we can get some kind of pictures of your house, because it's really nice. And like you said, it's fresh. It feels airy, just warm. Like how I would want my house to be. And you did such an excellent job. You hit it on the head, and that's rare to find. So I definitely just wanted to get you in here, pick your brain a little bit. Get your story out there. So thank you for coming in here.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope that you can come to see
yes.
work in the studio, right? Because I forgot to mention that.
Yes,
that
for
there's
sure.
an art studio in
I actually
the house.
want to see your splash boards, your mood boards.
Yes.
I want to see how you did it, because I keep telling, like a year before we break ground, if I sign a contract to build a house, like please start looking. Like every day, you need to start picking appliances. It's so
Yes,
much.
It's very important.
It's so much. It's so hard, and everything has to. When you do it right, everything just works together.
Especially when you're ordering, right? Because you
Yeah.
have to order ahead. It takes
Yeah.
a while to
Yeah.
deliver. Yeah.
Yeah, and a
I
lot of
agree.
people don't do that, and it gets done anyways. But again, thank you.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it too.
And that concludes